So Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he exclaimed, "This is the camp of God." The beginning of Genesis 32 reminds us of the beginning of Jacob's journey. While in a place at dark, he saw angels of God going up and down a staircase. In Genesis 32, Jacob meets God's messengers once again. The narrator tells us this because we are to remember the whole point of Jacob's journey. The hero's journey is not just about journeying away from home and then returning home. The focus instead is on the transformation of the protagonists along their journey. We're supposed to be looking for how is Jacob going to transform in this moment. After picking up new allies and enemies, the hero finds himself in a dark and secluded place where he experiences some sort of great agony. That's how this hero's journey is supposed to go. How the hero responds in that moment will lead to transformation. And as we get to Genesis 32, verse 24, we get to Jacob's moment of transformation. What I want to ask as we briefly look at this passage is this: do we trust God to bless our lives even in the midst of agony? Genesis 32, verse 24, is the moment that Jacob enters his own dark cave. The text says this: "So Jacob was left alone. Then a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not defeat Jacob, he struck the socket of his hip. So the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him." This peculiar passage is made clear later on when Jacob says in verse 28 that he had seen the face of God and yet lived. The person that Jacob was wrestling with all night was not just a mere man, although the text says he is a man. It was very likely, based on Jacob's own words, very likely an angel of the Lord. But we have to stop and ask the question, why in the world is this spirit sent by God wrestling with Jacob at all? And I think it's because wrestling encapsulates who Jacob has been all throughout his life. The name Jacob literally means heel, because he was grabbing onto his twin brother's heel as they came out of the womb, if you remember back earlier in the book. Jacob is someone who fought for himself, even cheated to get the upper hand. We remember this back whenever he cheated Esau out of the blessing and cheated his uncle out of the flock. The dude is so strong that he is able to wrestle a spirit all night. But at the same time, it seems that the spirit could have ended the match long before it does, because the text says that he just simply poked Jacob's thigh and it dislocated it from its socket. Even when that happens, though, Jacob doesn't let go. The exchange of words between the two wrestlers is key. The man said, this is the angel, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." And Jacob, of course, responds, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The text then goes on to say that the angel asks him, "What is your name?" Of course, Jacob responds, "My name is Jacob." And the angel says, "No longer will your name be Jacob, but Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have prevailed." And in that moment, Jacob is transformed. He goes from being a conniving heel grabber to someone who comes face to face with people. He faces God in a sense, right? And he will face his brother. But did you notice Jacob's words? "I will not let go of you until you bless me." Jacob believed that at the end of the night, this spirit was there to bless him, not hurt him. Transformation can be as simple as walking in a park, but what we know from lived experiences and from the scriptures, it is not as easy as walking in a park. Even Jesus tells us that the path towards life is through taking up our crosses and following him. And so, how does this story help us wrestle in our walks with God? It shows us that we should have a similar disposition as Jacob. Jacob believed that being with God, even when it hurt, would end in his blessing. And so as we walk in our new beginning, We will experience agony. But when we do, we should likewise hold on to God, even when it seems like he is distant. I want to just give one example of how this can be lived out. Friends, if we're just being completely honest, the Bible is filled with stories that are not easy. In fact, it is filled with instructions that run counter to the way of our world. Our world is fine with partiality, giving people favors not based on truth, but on bias. But the Bible tells us that we are not to show partiality. And so this instruction can make certain moments in our lives just completely uncomfortable, especially when we are asked to make decisions not based on facts or truth, but based on what the crowds or the authorities are saying, based off of what is trending, right? The Bible also says that we are called to live holy, but this runs counter to a world that chants life is about being wild and free. And I'm sure that there are specific passages in the Bible that you simply wrestle with. I know that there are passages that I wrestle with. But let me be clear. I'm not talking about passages that are hard to interpret. That's a different category. I'm talking about the teachings that you know what it says and you question if it is good. In those moments of reading the Bible and being called to follow God even when it looks bad according to the world, I want to invite you to wrestle with the Lord. Wrestle with the Lord by asking questions, praying, discerning, but believing that God's word will bless us. For to this is what we have been called according to 1 Peter 2, to receive God and his blessings.